Good morning, good Saturday morning to you. Wow, it is stormy here. Now, it's kind of passed over at this point, but about 4 o'clock this morning, the wind started just blowing like crazy. And then we had a couple of really good storms come through. And then about 6, I finally just got up and got my coffee and sat in here and opened all my windows and had all the lights off and just watched the storm. It was really cool. It was fun. The lightning just dancing across the sky. It was really awesome. But before that, at 4 o'clock, the wind blew in and I thought, my umbrella's up and I wanted to take my flower. I've got a flower pot out on this patio that hangs up, and I didn't want that strong wind to blow it or to pull it off or, weaken it in some way or damage it. So I jumped up in my pajamas with no glasses. Sorry for the image. And the mental image. And I came out to the front patio, and sure enough, the wind had already hit the umbrella because I'd forgotten to close it last night. Well, I didn't know there was going to be a storm, right? And when you don't know, you don't know. And so it had already tried to take flight and taken the patio door, table with it, and it was kind of lodged. And this is 4 in the morning. I have no glasses and I'm in my PJs, and all I can think is get this umbrella closed. But it had jammed down into the table, and I couldn't turn the crank to close the umbrella. So I just stand it up, and I can't see a thing because it's dark. I'm not going to turn the light on when I'm outside in my pajamas, right? So I'm like, kind of funny, kind of not, right? And I finally got the umbrella down and got my flowers down and all that. And so then I started thinking about just the storm, and I was like, I didn't like being out there. It was lightning everywhere, and I was like, this is not the safest thing I've ever done, right? But I had to get the umbrella down. I couldn't let it go out and damage a vehicle or knock out a window. I mean, it was wanting to take off, right? The wind was very strong, and and I didn't want the umbrella to get torn up. I want to buy another one, right? So I had to get it. I had to figure it out with no glasses and pajamas. I had to figure it out. So I got it. It wasn't raining. That was a good thing. It was not raining yet, right? It was just super windy and lots of lightning. So I got the umbrella down and I got my flowers down, and I thought, man, had it been raining, I don't know if it'd been worth it to go out there. To be honest, just let it blow away, right? I don't know. We'll figure it out later. And I started thinking about, as I was sitting here in the dark watching the storm and drinking my coffee, and I thought, Jesus went out in a storm like this to get his disciples. He went out in that storm to make sure they were safe. He went out in that storm to make sure they got to the other side. He went out into that storm just to bring them peace. And I was like, I know it's a familiar story, but I love rolling those things over in my head and thinking about them again. And actually, it says he went out. Well, first off, he knew the storm was coming, right? I didn't know the storm was coming because I'd have protected my flowers first last night had I known there was a storm coming. I guess I didn't watch the news last night or something. Anyway, I didn't know. And so, but Jesus knew there was a storm coming. He knew they were going to get in that boat and get halfway across that lake at the sea, and the waves were going to overcome them. He knew that. And yet he stayed behind it. But then when in the middle of the storm, lightning, wind, rolling waves and all, he walked out on the water to them, right? And it says he went out in the fourth watch of the night, and that's between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And that's exactly where I was last night. So if I wanted to be real Bible-y, right, I could say, in the fourth watch of the night, I ran out onto my patio to save my flowers on my umbrella, right? If I want to be all Bible-y or King Jamesy, right? So because it's between 3 and 6 a.m. And that's where he went. He went right out. Yeah, Tina says, do you think it was to show him who he was? Absolutely. Everything Jesus did was to show who the Father was and who he was, right? And he came out there to bring them peace. But, this is the story where Peter got out of the boat and come walking to him on the water. There was two times he calmed the storm. Now the other time he was in the boat in Mark 4. He was in the boat with them when the storm came, and he was asleep because he had total peace. Why? Because he is the Prince of Peace. So he had nothing but peace. He's sleeping in the boat in the storm, and they woke him up and said, don't you care that we're going to die? And he's like, well, you're not going to die. Well, how would you think you're going to die? It's just a storm and I'm the peacemaker, right? And he stood up and he calmed the storm and they were like, wow. Right? Who is this that we've been traveling with? And in this story, he sent them out across the sea knowing the storm was coming. Why would he do that? As a follower, I'm going to say, why would you do that to me when I'm focused on myself, right? Why would God send me into something that he knows is going to be stormy? Why would he send me into something that he knows is going to be waves that's going to rock my life's boat, right? Why would he send me out into something that he knows is going to make me scared, right? Because he wants to bring that peace. The whole thing is sometimes we're in stuff, but it's not the end result, right? The storm did go away. Jesus walked out on there, and when Peter fell out, he picked Peter up, he put him in the boat, and then everything. I said, when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. When Jesus gets into the boat, the wind stops. When we let that peace reign in our heart, see, they were still out in the middle of the sea. It was still the third watch of the night, the middle of the night. 3 to 6 is the darkest part of the night. They always say it's darkest right before dawn, and about 6 is going to be close to dawn, depending on the time when the actual sunrise and the season it was and all that, right? But in that dark moment, the storm stopped when Jesus got in the boat. Now, I'm going to say this, don't get mad at me, but sometimes it ain't that easy. All right. I mean, oh, come on. That's one thing about this video. Our Peace Out devotions is we're going to be raw and real. Sometimes we know Jesus is in the boat. We know that he's here with us. We know that he's the Prince of Peace, but it doesn't make the storm stop immediately. And that's what gets frustrating because we know when he's in the boat, and that's the one thing is he is in the boat. In both of these stories, he ended up in the boat. He didn't just leave them he didn't walk back to the shore and go, okay, well, gotcha, y'all got it, all right, bye, I'm going back over to the other side. No, he got in the boat. Peace came to that boat because the Prince of Peace was in that boat. In the other story in Mark 4, Jesus was already in the boat, yet the storm still came. Because sometimes we think when we get saved, we don't have any struggles anymore. And sometimes it's erroneously preached that way. All your problems are going to end when you just accept Jesus. When you just become saved, then you're not going to have any problems. That's not the truth. Actually, Jesus said in this world you will have tribulations. But then his very next thing was, but. That means forget everything I just said. Be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. In these two stories, we see you're in a storm, guys. The boat is being rocked to and fro. There's the wind and waves are rocking your boat all over the place. You don't even know. You can't row against it anymore. You don't know what's going to happen. But in both of these stories, Jesus was in the boat. He ended up being in the boat. He didn't leave them in the storm by themselves. He was there with them, and he was that peacemaker. He brought that peace. He brings everything that he is in the boat with us, right? He didn't leave himself as the Son of God on the bank and come out to the boat and go calm the storm and then walk back to himself as the Son of God, Prince of Peace. No, he is the embodiment of God on this earth, and he brought all he was into those boats with those disciples, right? And so when he stepped into the boat, it said when they got into the boat, and Peter's already almost drowned, right? And he saved him too. The wind ceased. The wind ceased. In the other story, when Jesus spoke, the wind stopped. It just literally stopped. And have you ever had a struggle and you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God had calmed that? That the peace of God had and sometimes you just got to walk through it, but you don't walk through it without him. You don't walk through anything without him. He is in your boat. So if it gets windy, he doesn't get out. He doesn't run when he sees lightning and go, oh, I'm out of here. No, I don't know what y'all going to do. That's lightning. I'm gone. No, he stays with you in the storm until you can realize that peace. He will be there through the storm, after the storm, before the storm, during the storm. He knows the storms are going to come. He sent them out. This just blew my mind when I realized this. Jesus knew everything, right? He knew all these people. He knew what was going to happen. He sent them out into the boat, knowing that, well, here in a little bit, I'm going to be going out to them because they're going to be scared, and I'm going to go help them, right? And he sends us sometimes into situations knowing that we're going to need his help. And he never just sits on the bank going, I just don't feel like helping them today. I don't feel like walking out on the water today. I don't feel like giving them peace today. I don't feel like providing for them today. I don't feel like fill in the blank. He's always there. He knows there's going to be a storm. He knows there's going to be tribulations in this life. He knows there's going to be struggles. He knows we are human and we're going to get ourselves into binds. Now, these guys didn't necessarily get themselves into a bind, right? But when sometimes we get ourselves into a bind, and like we talked about Jonah yesterday, God still prepared a meeting place for Jonah, even though Jonah rebelled. Now these guys, this day in our here in Matthew 14, they didn't rebel. They obeyed Jesus, and the storm came. Sometimes that blows our mind too, because I'm like, I'm doing everything you told me to do. Why am I facing the storm, right? Why am I in this hard situation when I'm obeying God? They obeyed God. He said, "Get in the boat, go to the other side," and and uh, right here in verse 22, it says, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go to him to the other side. They were doing what was right, and they still ran into a storm. But he was still there. He came to them in the middle of it. We've used the example of Moses, because sometimes we want to use the measure of, is everything is going right? I'm obeying God and I'm doing everything cool and he's got my back. But when anything goes wrong, we go, well, I don't have any faith. Well, God ain't blessing me. Well, God ain't with me. Well, God ain't providing. No, he's still the same God. And Jesus sent them. They were obeying God and still found themselves in a storm. We're going to have storms. That's a given. We're going to have struggles. That's a given. But Jesus will always come to us. And when we let him in that boat, see, Peter didn't have to jump up and run to him. They could have tried to paddle away from him, right? Well, when we let him in our boat, when we let him in our heart, in the middle of the storm, we're going to have peace. We're going to have what we need. We're going to have strength. And even if the winds continue to blow, they will not have the effect because we've got peace in our boat. His followers were worth going after. I titled this Followers and Flowers because they're spelled almost the same. And I was like, I ain't going out there for my flowers, but Jesus went out after followers, right? And he said, I've got you. I'm still the Prince of Peace. And when we let him in a boat, in this boat, we're going to have his peace, even if there's a storm. And again, the storm doesn't indicate you missed God. The storm doesn't indicate you ain't got faith. That's real proper English there. The storm doesn't indicate that you went the wrong direction. You weren't following right. You didn't read your Bible enough. You didn't pray enough. You didn't trust enough. The storm's going to come. The trick, if that's the right word, is letting him in that boat in the middle of the storm. Because when we let him into our storm, he brings his peace. Then we can just peace out, right? Peace out, you guys. Have a great weekend. I hope I said something that makes sense. I'll see you Monday morning.